Getting engaged is a moment worth cherishing. A one-of-a-kind ring that you design at Blue Nile can help your love sparkle. Just choose your diamond and setting. When you've found the one, you'll get it delivered right to your door. Finding the right engagement ring can be nerve-wracking. At Blue Nile, you'll have the expert guidance needed and a diamond guarantee that ensures you're getting the highest quality at the best price. Cherish all of life's moments and save up to 30% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at Marines.com.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
There was a point during the Champions League final when I tweeted, "It's not as good as the Olympics, is it?" Now, Liverpool fans may disagree as they're listening to Anything But Footy this week as they wax lyrical about the joy of six. Careful what you say there, Michael. But I do think this week's lacklustre Europa League and Champions League finals have again, if needed, highlighted why we do this podcast. This is Anything But Footy, and I'm Michael.
I'm John. We're going to be talking lots about water, sailing, rowing, canoeing, triathlon. Yes, there's water in that too. Although two-time Olympic champion Ali Brownlee did his usual break in the running to win in Europe this week.
And we will start with water, deep water. Cold water for the Russians in a moment. Don't forget, you can get in touch with us via email, anythingbutfooty@gmail.com. You can tweet us, anythingbutf. You can get in touch with us on Facebook, on Instagram, and on YouTube, and we do love to read and hear your comments. And as I said, we'll start with deep water, and the Russian athletes in particular, could be facing another Olympic ban. I don't know whether you've seen the Sunday Times Insight investigation this week, but they have made some allegations that Russia's top athletics officials have overseen the forgery of documents to cover up a doping offence by high jumper Danil Lysenko. Now, he was the world indoor high jump champion in 2018. You may recall, in London at the London Stadium, formerly known as the Olympic Stadium, of course, he won a silver medal at the World Championships in 2017. He was hotly tipped to win a gold medal at Tokyo 2020. I think it's very unlikely we'll see him now because the Russian Athletics Federation are alleged to have conspired to help him avoid a ban for failing to inform drugs testers about his whereabouts last year. This, of course, is not just a huge blow to the sport of athletics, it's a huge blow to Olympic sport in general, but it's a blow to Vladimir Putin as well. He's been desperate for Russian athletes to return to the fold. You'll remember, of course, Russia have competed under the Olympic flag. Certainly at the last Winter Olympics, athletes who were outside the system, if you like, neutral athletes, were allowed to compete. They weren't allowed to hear the Russian national anthem. They weren't allowed to compete in Russian sports gear, but they were allowed to compete. And now it looks like the IOC, and the pressure, I would suggest, John, is really on them to maybe install a blanket ban over the Russian athletes. We recall in Rio in 2016, of course, Russian athletes didn't go, but there were Russians in other sports as the IOC put the decision on to the individual sporting federations. The IAAF held firm. Remember, the IPC banned Russia entirely from the Paralympics. I wonder whether these latest revelations, allegations, will really put the pressure on the International Olympic Committee this time around.
I think it's interesting, Michael, because there were reports around yesterday, and it did kind of raise my eyebrow when I first saw it, that Russian media were reporting that the Russian Athletics Federation would be reinstated at the next IAAF meeting, and that's up for debate in Monaco at the next meeting. And then I actually realised why, because as you rightly say, some brilliant reporting from the Sunday Times Insight team. Well done to Jonathan Calver and George Arbuthnot, who've put this article together and really got the question marks over the Russian Athletics Federation once again. basically, it's RUSAF, the Russian Athletics Federation, overseeing the fabrication of medical documents to cover up a doping offence. That's the allegation. Investigators from the Athletics Integrity Unit are now saying they are investigating this. And if this is true, they shouldn't return to the sport. Athletics, they should not be coming back to it. They have been doing everything they can to allegedly try and clean up. That's what they've told WADA, who've been working with them, the World Anti-Drugs Organisation, also the IAAF, led by Lord Coe as well. And all that really, to me, mounts to nothing if this is true. And that is always the biggest question. It doesn't surprise me that this has come out. These are the allegations against Russia. We know state-sponsored doping. They drilled holes in the walls and swapped urine samples in a lab in Sochi in 2014. The Winter Olympics, as we've said on Anything But Footy before, are totally tarnished, that Winter Olympics, because of what they did. And that McLaren report that subsequently followed that did say it was state-wide sponsored doping. 3 Russian high jumpers who won London 2012 medals, both the male and female gold medalists, have both subsequently been banned for steroids. If they take steroids, it apparently reduces your body fat, but they've been banned. So nothing of this surprises me, and I think that's the worrying thing about this. And it's difficult. The IAAF obviously and WADA want to welcome Russia back at some point, because this is a country, a nation, a state that obviously is a huge athletics history, and they want to be part of it, but they just can't do it, it appears, without cheating. So are we going to miss them? Should they just continue to be banned? I would say the IAAF needs to stand firm on this and continue with this ban, particularly while this investigation from the AIU is going on. I will say that RUSAF denies any of this. They say there's been no cover-up. An athlete, Lysenko, as you rightly said, won that silver in 2017 in London, said false stories being spread about this case. He said missed drugs tests were just carelessness. I'll let you make your own mind up.
Well, actually, Lysenko's been banned since last August, and I was just having a trawl through Twitter, as you often do when you see stories like this. And Vicky Orvis, who was a legendary athletics reporter with the Sun newspaper, sadly, we lost Vicky, the athletics reporting fraternity, the sports reporting fraternity, lost Vicky after a very long cancer battle earlier on this year. She actually reported at the time, last August, that Lysenko was going to be banned, but only now has this attempted cover-up story come to light thanks to this newspaper investigation by the Sunday Times. It centres around a bogus clinic, which they're talking about, which turns out to be a demolition site in Moscow. Fake doctors, it's alleged, fabricated paperwork to suggest that Lysenko was too ill to provide his location. And I agree with you. I think the IAAF need to remain firm here, and I think the IOC need to be firm and firmer as well. That McLaren report that you mentioned, it talked about a 4-year state-run doping program across the vast majority of the 28 Olympic sports. And Russian and before Russia, Soviet athletes and the system have been cheating Olympians out of medals for generations. This goes back years and years and years. This goes back to before the Iron Curtain. It's something that's happening now. It's something that's happening today. And the IOC, if they want to keep the integrity of their event, and we've both been to a couple of Olympic Games, lots of people, millions of people around the world have watched Olympic Games. Do they trust what they have seen? If the IOC are not firm here, they will not trust what they see next time around in Tokyo. And
I just don't think they'll do it, though, Michael. I mean, if you're not going to do it for 4 years of state-sponsored doping across all of those sports in that McLaren report, why are you going to do it in one athletics integrity unit investigation? That's my, I want them to do it. I totally agree with what you're saying. I just can't see them doing it.
And I think the appetite to do it is not there often between the sports and the athletes. You know, I've sat in press conferences ahead of things like the anniversary games in London. Press conferences featuring people like Renu Lavilleni, Daphne Shippers, leading athletes, gold medal winners at World and Olympic Games. And you've got reporters, good reporters, like Rob Harris of the Associated Press, who we've mentioned on Anything But Footy before, asking these big names about drugs in their sport, and their body language and what they say suggests that they are not interested. I've stood there myself. I've put questions about drugs to Christina Horrigu. She just walked off. I put a question about drugs in the sport to Laura Waitman. She rolled her eyes at me and told me I was a little bit naughty for doing it. These, I think, are genuine inquiries, and I'm putting those questions to those athletes, first and foremost as a sports journalist and athletics journalist, but secondly as a conduit of the athletics supporting public. And if we're going to pay our hard-earned cash and go and watch athletics at world, European levels, if we want big crowds to go out into the British Championships at Birmingham, we need to believe what we're saying, and first and foremost, the athletes and the sports themselves need to wise up, they need to stand up, they need to accept there's a problem, and they need to meet it head on.
Absolutely. We're going to talk more about athletics in this episode of Anything But Footy, but we will talk Anthony Joshua and Johanna Konta, some contrasting emotions for those two in performances this week. But those athletes that you mentioned, some great performances in the Diamond League meeting in Stockholm this week, Michael. Dina Asher-Smith. I mean, I don't know how many more superlatives I can find apart from wow, just wow, and wow again. I mean, she delivered in Doha. We talked about it in episode 13 of Anything But Footy. It's called What Now for Athletics after Caster Semenya. We'll talk about her in a moment. But asked if she could live up to the 3 European golds. I did that in that episode and said, can she win? Can she maintain that form that she showed last summer? Well, another 200 metres, a brilliant 200 metres in Stockholm. She beat the Olympic champion Elaine Thompson, the 2-time world champion Daphne Schippers, by at least 3 metres. It was absolutely superb, and a new world leading time of 22.18 seconds, improving her previous world leading mark of 22.26. And last edition, I said that Katarina Johnson-Thompson was going to be a bigger gold medal hope in Doha than maybe Dina Asher-Smith and probably Laura Muir. But actually now, Michael, I think they might be equal. Dina Asher-Smith and KJT, I mean, we are looking good, although we're a few months away.
Yeah, we are a few months away, and I think that would be the advisory, if you like, I'd put on this. Great time, world-leading time of 22.18 in very windy conditions in Stockholm. I had a few colleagues and friends that were out there, and the weather conditions not ideal for athletics, not ideal for sprinting, certainly. But the question about Dina Asher-Smith, and actually when you look at her name on those electronic scoreboards that they have inside stadiums, D. Asher-Smith. She's literally Dasher by name, Dasher by nature.
Whoa,
very
good.
A very, very good time for this time of year, but can she continue to progress that? She knows as well that the hard yards are still ahead of her, ahead of Doha. It's quite late on for the World Championships this year as well. She knows, and she said after that race, that she needs to stay in good shape. Has she peaked too soon? I hope not. I don't think she has. I think she's just coming into the Diamond League season off the back of a fantastic winter. But don't write off Elaine Thompson, Daphne Schippers and others yet, because there's still a lot of outdoor athletics to go before we get to that World Championships and, to all intents and purposes, before it really matters. We mentioned Laura Muir as well, 1,500 metres, a time of 4 minutes, 5.39 seconds. She's clearly in some good form as well. And also a mention for Eilish McColgan, who came 7th in the 5,000 metres after finding out her house had been burgled. The burglars stole medals and jewellery. And I think when you look at her mindset, when she's been told that information on that start line in Stockholm, 7th is a pretty reasonable performance when all is said and done and considered. And it's very much, isn't it, the ladies of British athletics, the women of British athletics that are leading the way at the moment. They are very much the best medal hopes. If you look at potential medals outside of the relays in Doha, you're looking at Dina Asher-Smith, Laura Muir, Katarina Johnson-Thompson, struggling maybe to come up with one of the men to get at the top or even on that podium as a solo individual athlete.
Quick word on McColgan, as you say, and also Melissa Courtney, because some good news was because they finished 7th and 8th in the 5,000 metres, they both qualified for Doha. So that was a bit of good news for McColgan, but absolutely no sleep, bad preparation. Obviously, we wish her all the best. And a quick word on Courtney, she won the Westminster Mile. I think you mentioned it on Anything But Footy in the last episode, Michael, the other weekend, beating Muir. And she also knocked off 11 seconds from her personal best and a Welsh record. So that is a good performance from her in Stockholm as well. Also catching our eye, I thought, Karsten Warhol from Norway impressively won the men's 400-metre hurdles, and American Michael Norman the men's 400 metres as well. Maybe some other non-British names to watch out for in Doha. But talking of what happened in Stockholm, I don't know if you know this, Michael, but the Diamond League women's 800 metres for the first time since 2015 was not won by someone who does not have XY chromosomes. And if you remember, in episode 12 of Anything But Footy, it's called What Now for Athletics after Caster Semenya decision. We talk about chromosomes, we talk about all of that. Caster Semenya and Francine Niyonsaba had won the last 22 races between them in the Diamond League. The new era under the IAAF's testosterone regulations is well and truly underway. It was Angie Wilson who won the women's 800 metres.
Caster Semenya has this week filed an appeal to Switzerland's Federal Supreme Court. That's in response to what we were talking about on the What Now for Athletics episode of Anything But Footy. That was in response to losing her case restricting testosterone levels in female runners. The Court of Arbitration of Sport had rejected Semenya's challenge against the IAAF ruling, so she is taking it higher, as I said then, to Switzerland's Federal Supreme Court. She says, "I'm a woman and a world-class athlete. The IAAF will not drug me or stop me being who I am." The focus of the appeal, of course, is all going to be around human rights. Currently, as you say there, DSD athletes, differences in sexual development athletes, running in races between 400 metres and a mile, must take medication to compete. And Caster Semenya said that she will not do it. Let's turn our attention on Anything But Footy to boxing now. And we all remember the wonderful scenes at the XL Centre in 2012, of course, when Anthony Joshua, heavyweight champion of the world as he was known up until a few hours ago, well, he hung a gold medal around his neck at the Olympics, but he no longer holds the WBA, WBO and IBF World Heavyweight crowns. He lost them at Madison Square Gardens to the Mexican Andy Ruiz Junior. It was a remarkable fight, wasn't it? Because Joshua had Ruiz on his backside. Ruiz floored Joshua 4 times. It was stopped in the 7th round, and it's Joshua's first defeat as a professional. Now, this is how big a favourite Anthony Joshua was. He was the 25-1 on favourite, but he just looked tired, he looked uninterested, he looked unprepared, he didn't seem to have any kind of focus. He has vowed to return. But let's remember Ruiz, who sports a belly a bit like mine, was only given 6 weeks' notice after Jarrell Miller, the original opponent, had to pull out. This is an iconic upset in the world of boxing, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I wrote down, I thought your summary of what Ruiz looks like is probably better than mine. I wrote down, not a trim, lean or athletic like Joshua. But yeah, I mean, he basically looks like he came in from the weekend and said, all right, I'll have a fight in Madison Square Gardens. I mean, he knocked him down 4 times, as you say, in 7 rounds. I mean, that is a pasting in anyone's opinion. And it's such a shame for Anthony Joshua, as you say, to lose his, he was on the verge of becoming the undisputed world heavyweight boxing champion of the world. He needed one more belt to do that, and those discussions have been taking place week in, week out, who's going to fight, when they're going to fight. But boy, oh boy, have we had some shocks this year. Spurs reaching a Champions League final and then not turning up. Tiger Woods winning again. But this is
Leeds not getting promoted.
Exactly. Norwich winning the championship. Goodness me.
That was a surprise.
It was. And for fans as well. Isn't this why we love sport? Because it's so unpredictable, because this didn't get any coverage, hardly any coverage in the build-up. This weekend, as we've been saying, we've got all this that we're talking about. We're talking about the Diamond League, we're talking about the Russian athletics, we're talking about Jana Konta and the French Open, the European Rowing Championships, all that. We had the Derby as well in horse racing. We've got the Cricket World Cup going on. This fight was a big fight. It had hardly any coverage, and that's mainly because everyone assumed that Joshua was going to go and win it. Now, I think the big question, as you rightly says, is can he come back? He wants to come back. He will. He didn't go to the press conference after, apparently, which I thought was a bit unlike him, to be fair. But, he said he's determined to get those belts back, and he described this as a minor setback. He's had a lot of support from fellow sportsmen and women on Twitter saying, you'll come back. It was just one of those things. Even Tyson Fury said that these things happen in sport. It's time to go again. You've got to dust yourself down and do that. And I thought, actually, I'm not a massive fan of Tyson Fury, but I thought that was actually quite the right thing for him to do and the message for him in Joshua. A rematch in London by the end of the year. But, you know, you get a chance in sport, don't you, sometimes to make amends for things. I think maybe this is his one chance to go, right, I'm going to learn from this and I'm never going to put myself in that position again.
And I just think maybe he took the foot off the gas in his preparation, wasn't focused, as I said correctly, thought because Ruiz, I mean, you only had to look at him and think, you know, he is no match for Anthony Joshua. And maybe Anthony Joshua, a bit like a Premier League team, if you like, you get drawn against a non-league side in the FA Cup, maybe at the non-league side's ground, who think they just need to turn up to win it. Maybe Anthony Joshua had that kind of mindset. I'll tell you who's pretty happy this morning, probably. Promoter Eddie Hearn will be pretty happy because there will be so much interest in that rematch in London that you talk about that will potentially be happening later this year. The purse for that will be unbelievable, and you know that the people behind the fighters will be making a serious amount of dough off the back of that. And Ruiz will be pretty happy as well, because I'm sure after last night's fight and with this probable rematch, that just sets him up for life. I'm mindful of a couple of other names in boxing. Hazim Rahman, who was again an unlikely winner when beating Lennox Lewis in 2001. And I remember James Buster Douglas beating Mike Tyson back in 1990 when no one was expected ever to beat Mike Tyson. And I think we put Ruiz now in that kind of category. He went there, Madison Square Garden. He did the job. He did the job on Anthony Joshua. He'll now get that opportunity for that probable rematch. And I know Anthony Joshua was a 25-1 on favourite last night, but I would make Joshua the hot favourite again in that rematch as well.
Good luck to him. I mean, he needs to focus. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think he just needs probably just to reset himself a little bit. And we've talked, haven't we, on previous episodes about athletes sometimes having to reset themselves. And I think this is probably just one of those moments in his career where he just needs to take stock of where he is, maybe the lifestyle he's living, the preparation he's making ahead of these big fights, and think, if I want to be one of those real greats, if I want to be a legendary name where there's been plenty of legendary names in heavyweight boxing, then maybe just next time I need to do things slightly different. So from Madison Square Garden, an iconic sporting venue, to the French Open and Paris, and another iconic sporting venue, of course, Roland Garros. And John, I know you've been watching quite a lot of Jo Konta, who's made it into the quarterfinals of the French Open. She beat the 23rd seed, Donna Vekic, 6-2, 6-4, the British number one, and she's now aiming to become the first Briton to reach the semi-finals since Joe Jury did it in 1983.
I'm going to say that I didn't realise Joe Jury was that good. Can I be really honest? Because yes, I have watched a lot of tennis this week, and Konta was the first British woman to reach the fourth round since 1983. She's now into her first ever quarter-final at Roland Garros, as you say. Up there really with the likes, as you said, Joe Jury. I just didn't realise that she was that good a tennis player, so I apologise to Joe Jury for that.
Wimbledon champion, Joe Jury, in mixed doubles, wasn't she?
I remember that. I do remember that, but I just didn't know that she had that career. And obviously Sue Barker progressed in the French Open as well and all that. So look, I was just going to hold my hands up and say what a fantastic performance. But boy, if we waited a long time to have a British woman in the quarterfinals of the, as you say, Roland Garros, because she has been brilliant, Johanna Konta. And you mentioned Anthony Joshua, maybe resetting and changing his focus. We've discussed it a few times on Anything But Footy about Konta changing her coach last year, totally going, right, this season, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to change. And she's beginning to deliver. And Martina Navratilova has said, that Konta is beginning to mix it up a little bit. She was quite predictable in the way that she played tennis. And Navratilova, one of the greatest ever, obviously, saying that, Konta has learnt from that since the change of coach, and she's mixing it up, and she's doing that. And actually, the two of the points that gave her victory today, as you rightly say, in hour and 24 minutes against Donna Vekic, were two drop shots. One to win a game and break the serve, and won the next to where she was trying to hold and serve for the match. So she's beginning to mix it up. She was full of smiles, Michael, from beginning to end. Absolutely loved playing on the big courts in Paris, and it really was one of the hottest days of Roland Garros so far. really, really warm, and she was out early at 11 o'clock in the morning UK time. And you just think, with Serena Williams out, Pliskova out, Wimbledon champion Angelique Kerber out, world number one Naomi Osaka saying, she's won the last 2 Grand Slams, don't forget, the US Open and the Australian. Are they coming to get you, Michael? Just don't know. Osaka's won the last 2 Grand Slams, the US Open and the Australian Open. She's out as well, admitting the number one mentally was too tough for her. There's a real chance for Johanna Konta here. Obviously, she's got some tough opponents to come, but you're in the last 8, and what a performance it was from her. And I tell you what has been a joy as well, watching it on free-to-air television, which is great. It's on ITV4. I know Eurosport are covering it as well, but it's refreshing coverage. It's just what I want from tennis. Just really clear commentary. It's a different mix of commentators, not smug, if you know what I mean, if you ever watch Wimbledon.
I do know what you mean.
And they just do the analysis. At the end of the day, you tune in at 8 or 8:30 at night, you see the last bit of live play, then there's considered analysis between John Inverdale and an expert. It could be Jim Courier, it could be Mark Petchey, it could be Annabelle Cross, Sam Smith, it could be anyone. No gimmicks, just what was good, what was bad, and who's going to win. And look, ITV4 have said basically they're there for the tennis and nothing else. And what I get so frustrated about with Wimbledon is the BBC are trying too hard to appeal to the non-tennis fan, and then frankly they annoy both tennis fans and the non-tennis fans of Wimbledon, and they're in a no-win situation. And why on earth ever John Inverdale was dropped from Wimbledon as he was, I will never know. It's been a joy watching that French Open, and I hope Johanna Konta goes on and does what she did at Wimbledon a couple of years ago and reaches at least the semi-finals, and let's hope for even more.
Yeah, well, Johanna Konta has been on an upward trajectory this year. She's done really well for Great Britain in the Federation Cup. She's reached finals on clay in Morocco and Rome. Never won a main draw match at Roland Garros before, but going great guns in Paris. And I echo your sentiments about John Inverdale, who's stepped down from BBC Radio this year as well after expertly anchoring Cheltenham, I think for around about quarter of a century, his last Cheltenham Festival in the horse racing this year as well. He's not been involved in the golf coverage. I wonder whether he'll turn up or probably not for the Open Golf, which I always think he's excellent at as well. I echo your sentiments, your comments about John Inverdale, a broadcaster who I've always really rated. Just one thing about Johanna Konta, though, as good as she is, do you think she will ever come around to liking me again?
Never.
Reason I
never in a million years.
The reason I mention this is we interviewed her. I think both of us separately interviewed her ahead of the Olympics in Rio, and she was world ranked 13th at the time and seeded 10th. And I said to her in an interview question, I went, Johanna, you're seeded in the top 15. She went, no, I'm seeded in the top 10. I said, apologies. I mean, you're world ranked in the top 15, aren't you? She went, no, I'm world ranked in the top 13. And the interview kind of went downhill from that moment on, really. I do say, though, it's karma, because 4 years before that, I was in the early hours of the morning at Team GB House, where Laura Robson and Andy Murray were brought in for some interviews with some non-rights holders and some newspapers and people like that, after he won, of course, his gold medal in the individual, and he won a medal, of course, with Laura Robson in the mixed doubles as well. And the reporter who interviewed Andy Murray just before me congratulated him on his silver and his bronze. And Andy's picture at the time was an absolute picture, and he went, no, a gold and a silver. And I thought to myself as I giggled internally, well, I'm glad that never happened to me. And 4 years later, something very similar, of course, happened to me with Johanna Konta in Rio. Anyway, that's just a little aside on.
It's a great story, and I tell you what, when we interview her again, we'll remind her of that, and hopefully, as I say, she might be a champion. Just a very quick word on the French Open, because as you can tell, I'm a bit of a fan. Obviously, the men's draw, you've still got Nadal, you've still got Federer, you've still got Djokovic. They're all cruising through, but watch out for Stan Wawrinka. He beat Tsitsipas of Greece today, 5 hours 8 minutes. He's a former champion, of course. He won the final set 8-6. He now faces fellow Swiss star Federer in the quarterfinals. That will be one to watch. And he could just cause a bit of an upset at the French Open this year.
And Johanna, if you're listening, and we'll probably tweet you into this, so you may well download it and give us a listen. Come on a future podcast, and I promise I'll do my homework better next time. In the rest of the world of Olympic and Paralympic sport this week, in the world of sailing, British Sailing have named 17 athletes for the Tokyo 2020 test event. The team is headlined, if you like, by Rio gold medalist Giles Scott and Hannah Mills.
Staying on the water, and a big 12 month for British rowing, as we've been talking about. 10 finalists reached the European Championships in Lucerne. 1 gold, 2 silvers, 1 bronze is what they came away with. The headlines, the men's 4 won gold ahead of Poland and Germany by 2 seconds. Pete Reed, Andy Triggs-Hodge, Tom James and Alex Gregory. No, they're not the team. They still hold the fastest time ever set in Lucerne in 2012, if anyone's interested. But well done to Sholto Carnegie, Rory Gibbs, Matt Rossiter and Ollie Cook. They are the men's European champions in rowing. Great news for them. And then a couple of silvers shows the strength in depth, according to Brendan Purcell, the British Rowing Director of Performance. The women's 8, including Rio silver medalist Zoe Lee and Karen Bennett, grabbed silver. And the men, including Olympic champion Mo Sabihi, in the final event of the weekend, just lost out to Germany by a second to finish second. And the men's quad sculls also grabbed bronze as well. So 5th in the medals table, behind Germany, Netherlands, Italy and Romania. And it's on to the World Rowing Championships at the end of August.
A big year to come for the British rowing team to see if they can reach the heady heights of British rowers past at Olympic level. Staying on the water, to borrow John's segue, canoeing. Liam Heath has won gold at the Canoe Sprint World Cup event in Germany, making it back-to-back World Cup wins, and the World Canoeing Championships are approaching. Meanwhile, John Schofield raced in British colours for the final time. Schofield and Heath won bronze together, you might recall, at London 2012. Meanwhile, Mallory Franklin, the European C1 Canoe Slalom champion now. The slalom canoe event, the slalom canoe event, the World Cup event coming to London, of course, at the Lee Valley, which hosted in 2012, is here in London next month.
We all know swimming, cycling, running is triathlon. Ali Brownlee is back with his 4th triathlon European Championship gold in vert. The 2-time Olympic champion from London and Rio powered to victory with his trademark break in the final running section in Holland. He completed a British double with Beth Potter triumphing in the women's event.
We're looking forward to following the Lionesses, of course, in the World Cup in France. England and Scotland, of course, have both qualified. The Lionesses, though, took a bit of a bump on the nose by losing their final warm-up game 1-0 to New Zealand in Brighton. Fantastic crowd for that match, of course, for that final warm-up game. The World Cup starts in Paris on Friday.
Yeah, Phil Neville says he's not worried. I'll point you back to my comments in Europe, Euphoria and Equality episode last week and let you decide which one applies. On to hockey. Doesn't look like British women will reach the final stages of the FIH Pro League, the first year this international event has been run. Olympic champions Great Britain lost to the world champions, and who they beat in 2016, Holland, 2-0 in Eindhoven. They also lost 4-1 in Antwerp to Belgium this week. And British men, though, are up to 3rd after a brilliant win against the Dutch, 3-1. Will Calnan, Sam Ward and Chris Griffiths scoring for Danny Kerry's side. He was in charge of the women in Rio, of course. They both face Germany next at the Lee Valley Hockey Centre on the Olympic Park.
In rugby sevens, congratulations to James Rodwell, who reached 100 tries in what is his last ever England appearance. They lost in the semi-finals of the Paris Sevens to Canada. Fiji won the tournament.
And the Olympic flame will be taking all over Japan inside 121 days, culminating in the Olympic Games next summer. It will start in Fukushima, where an earthquake and tsunami in 2011 culminated in a nuclear incident at a power plant, you remember. 10,000 torchbearers, including men, women and children of a wide range of nationalities and ages, will take part, say organisers. It reminds me of the brilliant Olympic torch here in London to those 2012 Games. We haven't got time to reminisce about that, but maybe in future podcasts, Michael.
And with that news, we will extinguish another episode of Anything But Footy. And don't forget to get in touch with us during the course of the week, of course. Your emails, we read them all, anythingbutfooty@gmail.com. We love to retweet you as well and interact with you on Twitter, Anything But F. You can find us there. We're also on Facebook, Insta and YouTube.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.